Hi, I'm Matt. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Danny. Really glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me to do this. This really is special. I didn't see this as a possibility 4 years ago. Yeah, wow, it's been a ride. So I'm supposed to sit up here and tell y'all what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I was told by my sponsor to not prepare for this, so if it sucks, it's his fault. So all I did was read the big book today, and I knew that he would approve. Anyway, so, I don't know. I guess I'll start where it began. I was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and we quickly moved here to Texas, actually in a house across the street from where Danny currently lives. It's pretty weird. When I went over there to meet with him early in my sobriety, I was like, this is just too bizarre. I pulled up to his house, and I'm looking at the house that I didn't really grow up there because we moved to another place down the road pretty soon. But one of those kind of God moments. I got my coffee today. But I had a really normal childhood. Like I was an adventurous kid. I was an athletic kid. I loved the outdoors. I did not grow up in an alcoholic home. Neither one of my parents are alcoholics. My mother's father was, and I don't really know much of that other than my vague memory of him, fussing at us, telling us, like, you better go get yourself a Switch. And that's kind of all I really remember of Grandpa. But, it was a great childhood. Like, my dad's job took us to Kenya, just full of adventure. My mom, we got a sailboat when I was a little kid. We went to the beach all the time. Very, very, even-keeled and relatively normal. As a kid, some of my friends, we lived in Lakewood Forest down the road, and a lot of people didn't keep their garage doors locked at night. And in junior high school, some of my buddies, Dustin and Drew, would go in and sneak beers out of people's garage. And that was probably the first beer I had. And I didn't like it, it didn't taste good. Like, let's just, whatever. So continued on through high school and socially drank like most kids did. I was on the baseball team, and we partied with the girls, and that was kind of the cool thing to do. Still wasn't too, I got sick a couple of times, and I really didn't like that. I remember one time at my cousin's wedding, at Stuart's wedding, I drank a lot and got real sick, and so I just kind of stayed away from it for a while. I just didn't like that sick feeling, because the few times that I drank to where I was sick, and through college, I went to Sam Houston, and I partied a lot, but booze were not central to that. There was some psychedelic drugs involved, but just again, like, socially drinking, nothing real hardcore. Like fast forward a little bit to graduate school, and that's when the alcohol consumption kind of really picked up a little bit, mainly socially. It gave me, I never really had too much problem, like, socially interacting with people. I felt pretty comfortable most of the time. I'm kind of shy, but, once I got around people, I knew I felt okay. I never felt, like, terribly awkward or terribly, like, oh, I'm an outcast. Like, none of that. That came later. So during graduate school, the social lubricant of alcohol was around heavy, and I was in an element that I wasn't real comfortable with. I grew up wanting to be, this is another thing that I've learned in this program, like what Matt's plan is always sold me short on what God's plan is, I've found out, right? I wanted to be an auto mechanic in high school, and I got accepted to college, and my parents encouraged me, like, you probably should go to college, you got accepted, like, do that. Well, I floundered until I really found my passion, which was photography and art. And that's been a huge part of my life, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But, once I found that, I got really focused on school. My grades turned completely around. I started making straight A's. I graduated college with honors. I got accepted to a very competitive graduate program. And I was both, much like many alcoholics, I was in a conundrum of, like, I felt very accomplished, yet I felt totally out of place and uncomfortable at the same time. I was really proud of where I had gotten, but I'm like, how the hell did I get here? I'm in an MFA program in Denton, Texas. Like, I don't even, like, fit in with these people. My values don't. I had all these, like, like resentments. I see them as now. But I had a good time. I was learning a lot. I was growing. It was something new. I really enjoyed it, and I especially enjoyed, as the alcohol became more and more a part of my life. I enjoyed that part of it. The parties, the gallery scene, going down to Dallas or Fort Worth, the parties that we would have with the other graduate students. All that. It felt glamorous. It felt ritzy. It felt. I had arrived, as Danny has said before. Some of y'all that have been around here a while, you're gonna hear me repeat some stuff because it's monkey see, monkey do. So, sorry, and I'm sorry if I bounce around, but I had arrived. The alcohol was the lubricant that helped me fit in. And it helped me be somebody who I didn't really know how to be, and it worked until it didn't. So I finished graduate school and I got a job at a pretty prestigious museum in Fort Worth and moved down to Fort Worth and was living alone, and the drinking, kind of increased, and I was still holding it together. Still hadn't had any major consequences yet. Oh, I should back up to an incident that occurred in graduate school. It should have been, to me, a real eye-opener. I had come home to assist my professor in installing an exhibition, and the night before I had proceeded to go out with my friends up here and just party all night, and I wound up blacking out and woke up to my mother screaming bloody murder because one bedroom was in their house and my parents' house was full of vomit. I was in another bedroom also full of vomit. My car was outside, flat tire, the side view mirror was hanging down, grass all over it, and I had no idea how any of it had happened. I'm just like, you got me. I just, no explanation whatsoever. It was terrifying. I was absolutely horrified because I woke up and I was still drunk, and it was just awful, and I kind of remembered a vague recollection of like a violent occurrence in the car, and thankfully, like many times, my parents bailed me out. I don't know where I'd be without my parents. They were going out of town that day, and I had to go drive up and down that road to make sure I didn't kill any. I didn't know. I was so terrified that I'd killed somebody, and I remember I was trying to figure out what I hit, looking around, and what did I hit? What did I hit? And I saw a state trooper, and I'm like, oh my God, he's coming to get me. And that paranoia. I don't know if. That's kind of when some of that kind of paranoia, some of y'all might, of they're after me, they're coming to get me, and I don't know who they is, Anyways. So in Fort Worth, the drinking, that didn't alarm me enough. That incident came and went, and, I should have came over here and met y'all after that occasion, and I didn't. There was other situations that happened too, but, so I was working in Fort Worth, and I was in a grant-funded job, and I knew that was kind of coming to an end. And an opportunity came up here in Houston at a very prestigious museum downtown, and I was just so thrilled for the opportunity to come home. Again, it made me feel like I had arrived. This was a really, really select job. It was very prestigious. It didn't pay anything, but it had a decent... It had a decent expense account and a travel budget, so that was all right. And I'll get to that in a minute. So I came home to Houston, and, the book, those of y'all familiar with the book, this part of the story gets to be just like Bill's story almost, So I came home to Houston, and I thought I had arrived. I moved in with my parents, and partying commenced, and, I kind of was free will, run riot, drinking was heavy, and I was doing all I could to hide it and keep it together. And I moved. I decided I needed to move out. Of course, I was a grown adult living with my parents. I needed to move out, so I moved in with my buddy, who also drank alcoholically, and that turned out to just kind of, not that it's of course not his fault. That's what alcoholics do. We find other alcoholics to drink around. And that way we don't have to feel, we can drink like we want to drink, right? So the drinking continued to get worse. It progressively like, as we know, this disease is primary, permanent, and progressive. It gets worse, right? I got involved in some pretty toxic relationships with women, and I say relationships. That's how I was rolling at the time. I was very inconsiderate. I was incredibly selfish, treating other people like dirt. Very using them. Dating multiple people at the same time. I had met my fiance at that time, and did some things that I'm not proud of in the way that I treated her. So yeah, during all that, I started to travel quite a bit for the museum I was working for, and the traveling became more and more problematic. Like, the drinking on the trips got just real heavy, and I was doing everything I could to hide. I wouldn't turn in the itemized receipt, and there'd be these weird emails that were like sent to everybody right after I got back from a trip, like, you're supposed to turn in itemized receipts, and like. One of these other things, my boss, in one of my reviews early on, my boss called me in, and he was like, and I've had chronic back problems for most of my adult life, and my boss said to me, he's like, and he was aware of that, he was like, I'm really worried about your health, and I was like, oh, David, it's okay, I'm taking care of my back, and he said, no, it's not your back, it's your drinking, and I was like, shocked, I was like, oh my God, how could he know? Like, how could my employer know? Where when I got there, I would perform, I was really good at my job. I was really good at my job, right, when I first started. I loved it. It's amazing the things that alcohol will take from me if I allow it to, because I'm an alcoholic, and I have, an allergy to that stuff. So, sorry, back to, another one of these instances that should have been a call for me to come in here. So far, and no legal consequences. And Dave, my boss is telling me, hey, I'm concerned about your drinking. So obviously, I didn't ever see him. This is my boss. I never saw him. So this has gotten around to him, right? It's like, this was a guy that was very hands off. He worked in a different building than me, and I worked alone most of the time. And this is where at the museum, this is the point in which it just really got really bad. Like, I had been living with Nick. We were both drinking extremely alcoholically, and that got so bad. Something told me that I needed to get out of that situation. So I moved back in with my parents, and that wasn't working out either. I couldn't drink like I wanted to, and I was having to do stuff that was real sketchy. Stealing my parents out, just grown ass man, doing things that a teenager, behaving like a teenager, stealing alcohol, stealing money, hiding everything, just dancing around the conversation, as Danny says, all the time. Never been able to look anybody in the eye, like just pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization, and it got worse from there. I got into another toxic relationship with another individual. Moved in with her, and we partied a lot. We drank hard. We drank all the time. And thankfully, I hate to say this, but thankfully, she had some sense, and God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. Her mother was dying of alcoholism, and she saw where I was headed. She could see the writing on the wall. She put an ultimatum on me. I didn't meet that ultimatum, and she walked out the door. And that was probably one of the best decisions she ever made. And from there, I almost drank myself to death. So I continued on working at the museum, but I wasn't really working. At this point, my alcoholism, my addiction had gotten to, my dependence was so deep and so physical, I couldn't go more than 4 hours without having alcohol. I mean, I had a medical addiction, it just, my body couldn't do it. I would wake up in the middle of the night, I had to have it. Before work in the morning, I had to have a drink, and if I didn't have any vodka, I thought that if I drank vodka, people wouldn't be able to smell it.
Right?
I started picking up Coors Lights on the way to work in the morning. I mean, it was just so sad, I've heard people say, like, how did a nice guy like me get to a place like this? Drinking beer on the way to work and thinking nobody's going to notice in a museum. in an art museum. So one day, I remember a couple of days before this, I was shooting a large piece of artwork in one of the big conference rooms, and this was kind of unusual because normally I worked in my own studio. The artwork was brought to me. I photographed it. This time we were in a big conference room. Board members were in there. My boss was in there, and I'm in almost DTs, shaking, sweating. It's bad. It's bad. David's there. He can see it, and I think it was like the next day he comes and gets me, and he brings me over to HR, and I'm like, I found out HR has breathalyzers in their office. Yeah, I didn't know that. So they did that, and it was just, I don't even remember what my BAC was. It was just something off the charts because I was pickled. I had drank so much, like I needed it to not go into delirium tremens, and it was just it was bad, and they wouldn't let me drive home. They made me call an Uber to take a drug screen, and I had just had knee surgery, so I was on painkillers as well, so it just looked really bad, and so I went back to work the next couple of days. I can't believe it. I can't believe they let me back in there, but somehow they did. And they did it. They did that again. They came and got me a couple of days later, and they did another breathalyzer on me. And this time they were like, "All right, you're suspended, put on administrative leave, and you need to go. And you need to Uber. You can't drive." And I was like, "Okay, I'll Uber." Yeah, and I drove away, and at this point the gig was up. Right, I knew I was screwed. It was over, and I. Desperately, I guess somehow deep down inside of me, I was kind of hoping something like this would happen, and I don't know. Looking back, I kind of maybe felt a sense of relief that it wasn't a DWI, me getting pulled over, and that's when the gig was up. I was like, all right, well, if this is something, I'm losing my job. That I was really, really proud of that job. I was really, really, really proud of that. Like that had become a very defining character. That I allowed that to become part of my identity, which is not healthy, but that's the way it was. So, at that point, I had to tell my Meredith and I were together at that point, and, I told her, and I guess I told my parents, and I went into my first go-round of a medical detox treatment, So I went to the park, and I was like, I got to do something. I knew like I had to have help. I couldn't just stop. Like I knew I would get sick. I might die. So I went there and I was going to get cleaned up, and things were going to get better. I was clean. Had that period of sobriety. I could get out. All I needed to do was to just break that physical addiction. That was what I was convinced of. I was like, I had just drank so much that I got physically addicted, and I just needed to break that, and I would be able to get out. And I would learn a little bit while I was in there. And that's what it would be. I'd get out and I'd be able to control this thing, and I'd have a fresh start. And at that point, I didn't know if I was fired yet, but I got fired while I was in there. So I'll never forget sitting in park for the first time. This counselor named Barry Sanchez, who wound up helping save my life later on. I was sitting in his process room, and he looked at me, and he was like, "What's your deal?" And I was like, I'm just here for detox." And he goes, "Rinse and repeat." And I was furious. I was like, "You don't know me. You don't know who Matt Golden is." I got this thing figured out, man. Y'all just don't know how to manage and control your drinking. Like, I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna learn all this stuff about alcoholism, and I'm gonna figure out. I just drank too much. I just let it get out of control. Give me some time. Give me some more of those Valiums. I'll hang out and smoke a bunch of cigarettes. I just need to get clean. Just get me cleaned up. I'll dry it out. And I got this thing. I got this. So I did that. I stayed in the park and got out and found out I had been fired from the museum. Now, I knew that was coming. I was hoping that maybe my little shot at detox would save my job. But they, I was real resentful for a very long time that they didn't suggest I go to treatment and offer to pay for it, but and that's how we operate. That's how this alcoholic operates, right? Like, that's how I think. That's the way my brain works. Is like it's the museum's fault. It's y'all's fault. It's you. It's the woman. For a long time I drank at things and people, and I didn't even know I was doing it. But I don't want to get back on track. So I got out of that treatment facility, and I had a plan. I was going to start working on my teaching, my goal of becoming a teacher. And that is what I had initially wanted to do when I set out to attend graduate school. I wanted to be a professor, and I wanted to teach art and photography, and that was my goal in doing that. I wanted to be in education. I had wanted to do that for quite a long time, art education. So that was my plan, and I had cashed out my retirement and what little bit of savings I had from the museum, and proceeded to drink all that away that summer. I didn't even make any attempt at staying sober when I got out of that first detox. I don't think I came in here then. That was June of 2018. And so fast forward to August of 2018, I wound up in Memorial, a Methodist hospital with pancreatitis, almost, knocking on death's door. Woke up with severe abdominal pain one day, and we had gone to the river. I love the river. I love New Braunfels. It's part of my childhood too. We had gone to the river, and I just drank myself stupid. One morning, another thing that stands out in my memory, is our good friend Tina seeing me at 7 o'clock in the morning, drinking, and she's like, "Maddie, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Why are you drinking?" And I didn't say anything because I figured she knew. I'm like, "Don't you know I have to drink? I can't not drink right now." That's where I was at that point in time. It was, it wasn't but a few days later that things got real bad, and I went into the hospital and stayed in there for almost a week. And I don't remember much of that, but I do remember being a huge asshole to my mom and my sister and anybody else that was there, and Meredith. And I don't know. I didn't want to quit drinking. You hear all this stuff that was happening to me. I lost my job. I had crashed my car. There was other things that I haven't gone into, other drunkalogs, and I still didn't want to quit drinking. I still didn't see it. I was like, it's not the alcohol. I didn't even want to make an attempt. I was like, let me just control it. Just let me. I could not see a life without booze. It was wrapped up in everything I did. I had a lot. Whereas, all through my mid to late 20s, it was not very much a part of my life, and then it became everything. I took the drink, and the drink took me. And it was over. We never knew. At the beginning, there was nights when you never knew what was going to happen. And then at the end, it was sitting in my apartment, that summer, that whole rest of 2018, just drinking. It was pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. Going to the liquor store, I had this, we do these crazy things. It talks about, the book tells us all these crazy things that we try to do to manage and control our drinking. And I would buy those little tiny liquor bottles because I didn't want to have, first of all, it was kind of like self-preservation. I guess I was a little bit of afraid of what I'd do with a whole gallon of vodka or whatever, and then I didn't want to have an open container. So I was driving around to different liquor stores buying those little liquor bottles, just crazy, and drinking those. I can leave them in the car and hot, just insane, I wound up, losing my apartment that I had, and trying to change people, places, and things. And by this point, I should also mention, we hadn't started the multiple detoxes yet. This was, so August, we're still in August of 2018. I go back, after I get out of the hospital for pancreatitis, then I decide, all right, maybe should go to the treatment center and actually stay there for the whole time and try to learn something about this thing and maybe do something about the drinking because I almost died. And all right, I was willing to go sit in the treatment center and stay there for 28 days. But as soon as I got there, my plan was on. It was Matt's plan. I'm going to learn about this stuff. I was in there I heard all the stories of all this horrible stuff, but I'm still sitting there day in and day out, listening, plotting, scheming, conniving, figuring out how I'm going to manage and control my drinking when I get out of here. All right, now I'm even more educated. I know a lot about this. I've seen what it does to my liver. I've seen all these nasty images that they show you in treatment center. I've met the people that are like, that have just had all this horrible stuff happen to them. Like, it hadn't happened to me yet. Like, the yets, right? They say that we have the yets. So I still didn't see, could not see my part in all this alcoholic behavior, and all this destruction, and all this resentment. I had torn up my family's life, and I was sitting there plotting and scheming on how I was going to drink when I got out. And I remember I got out and I didn't drink immediately. I guess I don't know, God. I did not drink immediately. As soon as I had the opportunity, I managed to keep it together for a couple of weeks, when they released me. Maybe not even a couple of weeks. I think it was more like a week. And I had left a meeting over at Cypress Group. And I don't know. I hear people talk about how the car just drives itself into the liquor store, and it felt like that's what happened. I just drove over to the liquor store and got a little bit, and I had to go to the park the next morning, and I started drinking. They didn't catch on that first day, but it wasn't long before they caught on, and basically kicked me out of the program, and we're like, okay, you need to go to sober living if you want to get back into the program. So did that, went into sober living, thought that would, that was okay. We'll try this. Let's try sober living. Was still involved in the park and doing PHP. Drank again. Got out of that sober living house. Drank again, and that set that between June of 2018 and June of 2019. I went into detox 5 times. I have it written in my book here. My mom helped with a couple of those. My whole family's been incredibly gracious through this thing. I wouldn't be here without them. I kept getting close to 30 days, and I think I've got this thing. I've got it. All right, I can go 27 days without drinking. Let me try a little bit. Just a little bit. Just this one time. Just like that story with the guy putting the whiskey in the milk. If I put it in milk, it'll be okay. And it just got, worse and worse and worse every time. Never better, always worse. One day, as I'm drinking myself away with nothing to offer anybody, I'm a guy living on my girlfriend's couch, basically, with nothing to offer anybody, driving around every day while she goes to work, trying to figure out how I'm going to get the next drink. She's buying a house, and I'm just like, I'm at the point to where I didn't care whether I lived or died. I just was like, I'm fucked. Like, I got nothing to offer anybody. This is just, this is it. This is it. This is all I've got, And I don't know what happened. I remember being in this neck brace because I had just had a neck surgery. I don't know if it was related to I had a pinched nerve in my neck. I didn't fall and break my neck per se, but had a pinched nerve in my neck. I had just had neck surgery, so I'm in this C-collar. And we're moving into this house that she's bought, and I'm just absolutely, I've been drinking, and I'm absolutely of no help to anybody. And I just knew, I was like, all right, I got to do something has to be done. And I told Meredith, when we were laying on the bed, and I was like, we got to go. We have to go to park. We have to go. And that was God doing for me what I can't do for myself. And that's what it was like for me. That was... Something happened that day, and I went over to park, and I began the journey. I remember calling Danny on the way over there, and by this time I had gotten a sponsor. I had tried to work the program. I had a sponsor before that it didn't work out, and I had come in here a little bit, and I was looking through some of my notes from early on in the treatment, and I saw, like I said, I'd go to a Lano club, and I would just sit right over there in that chair, and I wouldn't say anything, and I'd show up late, and I'd leave early. Sometimes I'd drink in the parking lot, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I'd tell Meredith I was coming, and sometimes I wouldn't. And one day I'd asked Danny to be my sponsor, and he said, well, meet me at the breakfast place down the road. And that was during one of those brief periods of sobriety that during that year of 2018, 2019 that I had asked him to do that, and I was kind of coming in here and just couldn't get it, man. And you guys accepted me. Like, nobody ever turned me away. Like, y'all saw me over there and just, you knew what I was going through, and that freaked me out at the beginning. So Danny agreed to be my sponsor, and that was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So I went into treatment, and I actually did it. Like, I was aggravated with the kids in there that were just trying to meet a date, and I was involved, and I was doing the work. Yeah, there's a whole, yeah. And I remember, calling Danny on the way there, and he's like, well, just call me when you get out. We'll be waiting. He's like, we'll be waiting for you. And so I started working the steps, and I hadn't done anything as far as my career goes. I still had nothing. I still hadn't started my teacher training. I still hadn't applied for a job. I got busted with a joint in 1999, and I've been letting this stupid arrest hang over my head forever, and I finally finished treatment. I mean, these are the kind of things, I'll tell you about a thank you note in a minute, that is just absurd. But this little marijuana arrest that I got popped with in 99 was like preventing me from, I had so much fear about this thing, and I even talked to Steve about it. And you guys showed me how to walk through stuff like that. Like, I got done with treatment, and I stayed sober. I didn't drink. I came in here every day at 6:30 in the morning, sometimes at noon, and then again at 7. I was living with my parents. She kicked me out. She said, you can't come back until you stay sober. And I got up in the morning. I came over here every day, 6:30, noon, and 7, because that's what they told me to do. I started meeting with Danny, because that's what they told me to do. I got over some of that fear about they're not going to hire me because I got busted with pot 20 years ago. And I applied for a job with the district that we're all sitting in here, and I got hired. And you know what? No, I didn't immediately get hired. I was so torn up about this arrest is that I contacted the FBI to find out because I already got my record kind of sealed, but it wasn't sealed enough because the school district was able to find out about it. So I contacted the FBI to find out if they would be willing to take my little pot arrest off my record. And the FBI wrote me back and kindly said, no, sir, we're not going to take this off your record. But that is where this alcoholic mind goes. I'm not going to apply for that job because I haven't gotten the FBI to clear my marijuana arrest from 20 years ago. I applied for the job and I got it. And I started substituting. And during that time, I was working the steps with Danny, and it slowly though, for me, I don't know. I'm a little bit self-deprecating sometimes, but I need remedial AA sometimes, and it took me over a year to work the steps, and it takes what it takes is one of those cliches that we have in here. I came in here and I started to hear you guys tell my story. And here's where I'm going to start repeating some of the stuff that I've heard y'all say, and those of y'all that have been here around, who says it, but this is all I really know what to do because, like Danny says, it's monkey see, monkey do. I just showed up, I came in, I sat all the way down, and I took the cotton out of my ears and I put them in my mouth and I started listening to what y'all had to say. And Danny said, come over here, we're going to go to the Texas house, come with us. Come over to my house, we're going to meet, and we're going to study the big book. Maybe you should think about learn how to make coffee at the club. Maybe you should take out the trash every once in a while, which I could be better about. But, he started telling me little things, and little by little, I started seeing some changes in my life, I still didn't get this whole God thing yet. I came in here and I just wanted to stop drinking. I didn't know I was going to have to, find God. That was pretty scary at first. But you guys showed me how to not drink one day at a time. I didn't know how to do that. And I finally got 30 days, and that was a huge milestone for me. Like I know it has been for some other folks, and then I got 60, and then I got 90, and then I got more and more, and I stuck around a little bit, and I started like really studying the book, and as I worked through these steps, changes started to happen in my life. Where I was full of resentment, fear, anger, disillusionment, self-pity, like that stuff started to slip away. I was still real, I had a lot, early on in sobriety, I had a lot of shame and guilt about losing my job at the museum. I really worried about that way too much, because looking back, just really dwelled on that way too long. I was really ashamed about the what I had brought on my family, my friends. I felt guilty about letting my friends down. A lot of my friends, might need this program, might not, I don't know, but in that way, I just, all kinds of emotions. Once I quit drinking, I had to learn I had to live in this neighborhood. And that's the other thing you guys taught me how to do. And that's the main thing you guys taught me how to do, right? Like, quitting drinking is just, that's just, like, the beginning. When I quit drinking allowed me to forget about all the crap that piles up during the day, and during the month, during the week. Take a drink, and, but I like to just, like, fuck it. And that's what we did a lot. Me and my friends, my buddy Nick, we said that all the time. Fuck it. And when you quit drinking, you don't get to do that anymore. You have to figure out, how do I walk through life, and not say that, and deal with life on life's terms. And I came in here, and that's what I get from you guys. I heard, that I'm always trying to run the show, and if I will work through these steps and do some of this stuff and do the work, I will figure out that, like, I am walking around with no power. I was always trying to arrange the show. The book. I started to say the book tells my story, and when I came in here, you guys, I thought y'all were following me around. I really did. But, I was like, they can't. That's pretty weird. Like, why is he talking to me? Like, I've never seen that guy in my life, and he's talking about, like, he said he's seen people out there drinking in the car. Like, did he see me? Like I was the first one that was out there drinking in the car before an AA meeting. I think that's the way I. And I came in here, and you guys stopped. You didn't ask me about my drinking. You told me about yours. You told me about your experience and your strength and your hope. And you showed me that, like, if I do a few simple things, I too can find some peace and serenity. And I didn't know what that meant before I came here. I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know that, what I was looking for, I brought with me. I didn't know that I could be wrong. Early on, Danny told me, he made us suggestions. We take suggestions in AA. We don't, there are no orders, there are no rules. And he made a suggestion to me that I on a white sheet of paper, write real big, Matt, you could be wrong, and tape it onto my mirror. And I didn't do that immediately because I thought, what a stupid thing to do. I'm not doing that. And finally, I was like, I think he maybe asked me, he said, did you ever do that? I'm like, no. He was like, maybe you should. It's just kind of, that's how, maybe you should. And so I did it. And it really, it made that was my first year teaching. I'll get to that in a minute. So I do some of these few simple things early on in the program, and things start to happen for me. I get a job. I stay sober. I enroll in the teacher certification program. I start to do life. I start to do the thing. And the pandemic hits, and that threw everything into a tailspin. But thank God for all y'all, because I don't recall all the details, but I remember being able to come here, and that was huge. There may have been a couple days that we couldn't, but it was very brief, and you guys kept the club open, and that was so big. It was so big because I saw In my program at the park, I saw people go out and not come back. You know, my friend Nick that I mentioned a few minutes ago is no longer here. He died a year ago yesterday. And he's somebody that could have used this program. But I didn't have to, that didn't have to be my story because of y'all. Because I came in here and I figured a new design for living. And you told me a bunch of other stuff besides I could be wrong and that what I'm looking for I brought with me. That fear is 50 miles wide and 50 miles tall, but it's only as thin as this ribbon. And then I can walk through that. So, I completed my teacher certification and I thought, my plan, Matt's plan is always, well, I guess I might be able to get hired in some crap district, and work at some broke school and, teach some. That's what's gonna happen to me. Well, poor is me, poor old me, and that's exactly not what happened. With the help of y'all and with the help of a sponsor, with the help of my family, I figured out how to walk through that huge amount of fear of applying for a job that I didn't know anything in a pandemic. And I wound up getting a job that I could only have dreamed of. I have a dark room. I have an amazing digital lab. I have an amazing group of students. I have a great boss. I live 7 minutes away from the school I teach at. So I say that to say if Matt were to be able to write the show and direct the show, I would be selling myself so short. Because what God does for me is way beyond what I could ever do for myself. I keep coming back to these meetings and to this place because I've learned that God works through y'all. I can't be consciously connected with God if I'm not connected with you guys here in AA. I told myself this summer that I was going to grow spiritually, physically, emotionally, and professionally. And I haven't done so good on the professional part, but I feel like I've done pretty well on the spiritual part. I committed to coming to the morning meetings every morning because it takes me back to that time early in my sobriety when I was coming here every day, and I just it's such a beautiful way to operate under these principles, these steps, the promises that come true. When I come here and I spend the time with you guys and I meet with my sponsor and I call another alcoholic, there's those 5 things that they suggest that we do to stay sober. Pray in the morning, call another alcoholic every day, go to meetings. What am I forgetting?
2 other things.
2 other things. I don't even know. I don't know. I know there's a lot of stuff I left out.
What about your postcard?
Oh, yeah. So here's a little thing that is big for me. Little things are huge for me, and this is it's an important. I don't know. 2 years ago, when I got this job at the amazing school that I'm teaching at, there was an issue with verification of my employment. The district had to speak to a supervisor. Well, my boss at the museum has retired and moved to a castle in England, and I'm not kidding. So he's literally unreachable, right? And so the district was like, we got to talk to somebody, on in person on the phone, one of your prior supervisors. And so I got in touch with my professor, that same professor who I missed that appointment of helping her install that exhibition because I didn't fully miss it. I was late, but because I had crashed my car. She gave me a recommendation. She put her neck out. She knew. I'm fairly certain she was aware that I had been fired from the museum because word spreads fast in that community. And she did it. And Danny at the time suggested that I write a thank you card to her, and I didn't. And it bothered me for years. And finally, he asked me recently, he said, did you ever, because we were talking about something else, a recommendation letter for a student that was requested of me and that I procrastinated on, and I was all torn up and twisted up about this recommendation letter, and I spoke to Danny about it, and he walked me through that, and I got that done. And when I was done with that, he said, "Oh, by the way, did you ever write that thank you letter to your professor?" And I said, "No." And he said, well, "Maybe you should do that." And like all these suggestions in AA that he's given me, it's not a maybe. It's I need to do that. If I want, Ron says, "How free do you want to be?" And if I want to be truly free, I need to write that thank you card. And I had come up with all these things, just like I do. I'm the king of overthinking. And I had come up with all these things that this thank you card needed to be. It needed to be a work of art. It needed to tell her how, it needed to be all these things that it just didn't, right? It just didn't need to be any of that. It needed to be, "Thank you, Dorneth, for recommending me. I really appreciate that. It means a lot." And that's what I did. I wrote a little bit more than that, but Danny told me, when you do that, there's something on the other side of you for that. Something on the other side of that for you. And maybe it's right here. Maybe this is it. Standing up here. So that's all I got. Thanks.